Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, bros, broettes, bro fluids, and non-bronary people listening to the Moustache Mafia podcast. I'm joined with a friend of the show, and in terms of uh, mafia terminology, associate of the Moustache Mafia, Brenton Lengel.
I love non-bronary.
Yeah, I just made that up. I'm real proud of that one.
That's a really good introduction, way better than mine. Yeah, I've been a friend of the pod for a while. This is, I think, is my second time appearing on the Moustache Mafia, formerly 5x5 podcast. For those of you who do not know me, I am an anarchist. I'm a playwright and comic creator. I'm the author of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, since we're talking about culture industry, Drek.
Oh no, it's pretty good. I've read the first two issues. They're really good.
Yeah.
Adorno wouldn't like it because Adorno doesn't like anything, but I enjoy it, and I'm pretty sure your audience enjoys it. And if you're not familiar with it, please do yourself a favor and pick it up if you're a fan of the medium.
Yeah, please do, guys. We are actually going to be launching a Kickstarter to pay for the creation of issue number 3. The sort of, I guess, elevator pitch for it is Snow White wakes up to Prince Charming's kiss 28 days after the zombie apocalypse. The 7 dwarves are dead. Prince Charming is polyamorous, and Snow White is dwarfed in power and experience by Rapunzel, who is Prince Charming's paramour, who's been keeping his dumbass alive in this horrible world. And, she's best described as a kung fu kind of warrior queen goddess. So, fairy tales as usual, blood, sex, kung fu, gender politics. But anyway, so Bobby, I was really excited when you invited me on here, but right before we do get into it, I just want to tell everybody, because we are about to launch the Kickstarter, if you just Google Snow White Zombie Apocalypse Kickstarter, or look up my Twitter at Brenton Lengel, you can find a link. I'm going to be launching the Kickstarter to pay for the creation of the 3rd issue this coming week, probably Monday or Tuesday. And the more people I can get to follow that beforehand, the better. So if anybody's listening to this, please do follow it. And for those of you who are following along, I'm going to throw the link into the chat on the video so that you guys can click follow and help me with the almighty algorithm.
Do it. Do it now. So this week on the Moustache Mafia podcast, it's been a minute since I've been able to post content, guys, if you're listening to this on my channel, and I apologize for that, but we're going to be doing some more regular content, and we've got a lot of associates and made men members of the Moustache Mafia who are going to be contributing to that. I would like to say that Brenton actually did give me the idea for this week's topic. We're doing a great series on Homage to Catalonia on his channel, where we go through Orwellian literature chapter by chapter, week by week, and it is incredible. It's one of the great novels of the 20th century. But this discussion, Brenton gave me the idea because I mentioned that I had a teacher that told me that pathological personalities are attracted to pathological politics. And it's something that I've been kind of carrying around since he told me, and I didn't appreciate that was an actually interesting topic until Brenton gave me the idea. And I found a great quote from an excellent playwright named Bertolt Brecht. Brenton's probably familiar with him.
Yeah.
If he's not, he should be. Oh, outstanding. Cool. I get to not think less of you.
No. Brecht was a key part of my theater education. Though, of course, I was educated by liberals. So they mainly focused on like the new stuff that Brecht brought to theater, as opposed to really focusing on the ideology behind it and what he was trying to accomplish with epic theater.
And a little aside for you guys, something very kind of disgusting about Brecht that people in the academy teach is that they completely gloss over the extreme left politics behind his work and focus on like the marketability of his plays. Mm-hmm. The place that most people are familiar with Brecht in, I guess, America now is a movie called The Lives of Others, which is an incredible film that everyone should watch. But at the same time, it frames Brecht as like an anti-communist, which is like the one problem with the film. But I have this great...
You notice they did the same thing with Orwell.
They did. They always do, because it's marketable, and that's something we're going to discuss a little later on. But this quotation is going to frame this conversation a little bit, and it's from a play called The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui. And if you haven't seen that, go out of your way to see it. If you haven't read it, go out of your way to just read the script, because it's really hard to find a great production of Brecht in English these days. But this is the ending line of the play. It's also in a great movie called Cross of Iron, which is a very obscure film. But this is the last line of the play. It's a play about the rise and fall of Hitler, and it kind of applies to what's going on in the world right now. But here it goes. If we could learn to look instead of gawking, we'd see the horror in the heart of farce. If only we could act instead of talking, we wouldn't always end up on our arse. This was the thing that nearly had us mastered. Don't rejoice in his defeat, you men. Although the world stood up and stopped the bastard, the bitch that bore him is in heat again. And I've been thinking about this since the election, which was my birthday. And if anyone voted for Biden and helped get Trump out, you gave me a great birthday gift. So thanks, guys. But we're kind of rejoicing right now in the defeat of Donald Trump. And we're not realizing that, like Brecht said, the circumstances that produced Donald Trump are ripe to produce another Donald Trump, because nothing has changed about the pathological nature of our politics. Do you have anything on that one?
Well, no, I'll tell you, it's like straight off the bat. I was actually kind of trying to bite back jumping in on you because, this is your show.
No,
today.
Fire free.
But politics. So one of the things that surprised me when I first got involved with Occupy Wall Street was when I found out that psychopaths and sociopaths make up something like 1% of the population. But if you look at certain professions, particularly professions like Wall Street, cop, and also especially a politician, there's like 10%. And the fact is that those with psychopathic and sociopathic personalities are drawn to positions of power and respect and authority. And it's one of the things that kind of got me thinking very much in the realm of anarchism. It's okay, so we've got these people who can do a lot of damage. And I'm not saying that everybody who suffers from psychopathic or sociopathic personality traits and neuroatypicality, it's not like you can't be a person or anything. It's not like you can't be good for society. But it's a bit dangerous when you put somebody who, doesn't have the ability to experience empathy or shame or whatever, and you pop them into positions of extreme authority that can do a ton of damage. So, I really, when I kind of realized that, I was like, okay, so the fix here obviously is to eliminate these positions or find a way to make them not as attractive or to screen what better for these types of personalities or to do like all together. Which I think would probably be the best way, just a comprehensive approach. But yeah, I'm not at all surprised that horrible people are drawn to politics. And I think in our society where politicians are celebrities in and of themselves, and they are this major part of the ruling class. There were other societies where like civil service was not seen the way that it is today. And maybe that they were a little bit more resistant to that sort of infiltration.
Right. And the thing about producing a system is that we will always have the kind of pathological personalities that we're discussing in society. And again, you're right. Not all people who suffer from psychopathy or neuroatypical symptoms are evil people. But we're always going to have people like Donald Trump or like Hitler, the very, very thin analogy that Brecht used in society. The problem that we have is that we've got a system, Marx would call it the base and superstructure, that is very conducive to attracting those personalities to avenues of power. So if you're listening to this podcast or if you're listening to Brenton's show, you already know that late capitalism is a very, very damaging system. We have a system that incentivizes profit over people. We have a system that incentivizes deregulating companies that behave in very damaging ways to society. We have a system that has as its base the profit motive and the will to dominate and hierarchies. So when politics are created by that base, we have very pathological politics. And those politics will inevitably attract people who have the will to dominate in line with that base. So that sounds like pretty horrible and pretty discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that we have to realize is that the situation that we're in and the system that we've set up isn't inevitable, and it isn't inherently natural. These are problems that we have created through political choices from the systems that we've set up, and there are alternatives to that. Now, the specific way that we've produced a system that attracts
There's an alternative to liberalism? What, really?
There are several alternatives to liberalism.
I thought we were in the end of history. I thought everything was great and nothing would change.
That's another problem, is that we have a intelligentsia, and I use that word in the loosest possible way, and a political class that does believe that. And again, that's in service to the system that we've set up through political choice. So the things that we have to realize is that this situation is not natural, and it's not productive, certainly, and it's not something that we can't overcome. But another problem that we are facing, and I mentioned Adorno at the beginning of this in jest, but we're facing a culture industry that is an industrial capitalist culture industry, and it will reproduce what's profitable over and over and over again. So what we've seen in the last 4 years, 5 years really, because the presidential campaign of 2016 really started in 2015, is the culture industry reproducing in our politics something that was incredibly profitable in the economic sphere, which is Donald Trump's reality show circus.
Yep.
So when we do that, we create a political situation that attracts people like Donald Trump, reality stars, that are predisposed and highly influenced economically and politically to exploit the pathological situations that we've created through our choices.
Yeah, no, that, it makes a lot of sense. I've said before that kind of capitalism is like a machine. It like, people will say stuff like, they'll say like, oh, the problem isn't capitalism. It's bad people who have gotten their hands on the levers of power in capitalism. And I've kind of always countered that with, capitalism is a system that selects specific people and empowers them.
Right.
To be, it makes them capitalists because they've been successful within the system to a certain degree. And because of the system of incentives and what it winds up doing is it's a machine that produces leaders, but it produces leaders that are almost guaranteed to be complete and utter monsters. Like, they're clever a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time they're clever, but it also kind of selects the most amoral and the most ambitious among us and rewards their amoral quest for money and power with more and more money and power until they can climb to the very heights of our society, like Donald Trump,
Exactly. But again, the thing that we have to remember is that these are political choices that we make setting up that system in the first place. The culture industry itself is a choice, and capitalism reproduces, again, what's profitable. And in the way that you're talking about, people like Donald Trump are produced because capitalism will replicate itself constantly. We have the illusion of choice a lot of the times in our society. Go to your local grocery store, 7-Eleven, corner store, whatever you've got in your area. If you're like me, when I lived in Georgia, you might be in a food desert, and I'm sorry, but go down to your local food distribution center, and you'll inevitably find the snack aisle, and you'll see 100 different varieties of potato chips, but they're all still essentially potato chip, and that's kind of the illusion of choice that capitalism produces in our consumer lives. And our culture industry, as it became an industrial capitalist model over the last, probably since like the 1930s, after the advent of mass communication, reproduces that in our politics too. So that's why you'll see a lot of your hard left friends, and probably a lot of people listening to this are hard left because that's the way you tolerate hearing basically these facts. but you'll hear them talking about how the Republicans and the Democrats really resemble each other. That's also a product of our pathological reproductive culture system, where the two parties and our political parties in general will reproduce candidates that are similar to each other, while taking the little things that are perceived as profitable in cases of the parties winning elections, while stripping away the dialectic and uplifting things about them. So you see the Democrats, especially after the 1990s and the Clinton administration, start to strip away the ideology of like the FDR New Deal era, while maintaining the communicative processes and the communicative properties of that era. That's why you hear people like, and it's really crazy when you realize the history behind this, but you see people like Hillary Clinton talking like they're a progressive when they're really not.
Not anything close to a progressive. And, that was the Clintons' grift.
Yes.
Like the Clintons kind of drove the American, like the American Republican Party. They kind of drove them insane, because what they found in the 90s that was very, very effective was to campaign against radical Republicans while simultaneously co-opting most of their economic ideas and their economic plans. So they were able to capture people who, super rich, super wealthy people who liked the naked capitalism that the naked brutal capitalism that the Republicans were putting forth, but at the same time kind of wanted a nice happy face on it. And so you got Bill Clinton, the president who played the saxophone on late night TV, and
oh God, he did, didn't he?
He did. He played the saxophone on late night TV, and he had the affair with Monica Lewinsky after sexually harassing and, let's be honest, because he was an Epstein candidate, probably raping like a lot of people.
Allegedly in Minecraft.
Allegedly in Minecraft. Yes, obviously. He's a lawyer with a lot of power, so we're going to put that with a huge allegedly. But, he did. He flew on Epstein's plane. And, one of the things I remember thinking back to that, because I was a kid when that whole thing was going on, and the country was fighting over his impeachment, and it was like they were going after him for lying, if I remember right. Like and that's why he had that whole famous it depends on what your definition of is. Yeah, what the definition of is. But I always thought that scandal was very thin as a kid, because I'm like, well, it's just an affair. So why are people mad about this? And this is the thing, that type of affair, I think, would be much more damaging to a Democratic politician, like in our current state of things, not because of the affair itself, but because she was like freaking 22 at the time. And you got to think, remember yourself when you were 22?
God, I do, and it's cringy.
Yeah, and you imagine the 48, 50-year-old freaking leader of the free world is creeping on you.
I think I've seen a movie like that, but I don't think it was on YouTube.
Yeah, so his predatory behavior, was obvious, and this is a bit of a thing. But again, also politics attracts terrible people, and if you look at the Clintons' history, they were always terrible people. I think I can say that without an allegedly.
Yeah, no, that's an opinion, and I agree with it 100%. He did buy me McDonald's in New York once. I guess that's really? One positive. He bought everybody in the McDonald's, so he gave me $3.50 in exchange for wrecking the economy. But
hey, but you
thanks,
got
Bill.
McDonald's.
Thanks, Bill. But that scandal that you mentioned, it is part of the model of cultural transmission that's destroyed our politics, because that scandal, you're right, there was nothing real about that scandal. It was an infidelity, which is not an impeachable offense in any way, and it was the insinuation of lying. But there was nothing there is the way that we talk in our modern politics, which is annoying. But the marketing of the scandal was what the objective was. It wasn't to engage people in an intellectual way and to uplift them
about what this affair means,
right? But it was to preserve the emotional reaction of disgust from the Republican base, and it worked out pretty well for the Republican Party, which I would argue has no actual values, but to win elections.
I think we've seen that demonstrated with Donald Trump
pretty clearly. But the disgust reaction from the base was the goal of that. And if we look at the way that a lot of older people in our society who are much more likely to vote. Actually, in 2012, I did a breakdown of voter demographic data, and statistically, I'm pretty sure it's still the same. I haven't done the complete homework to verify this again, but as of 2012, statistically, the average American voter was most likely to be over 50, not college educated, white, and Catholic. So Michael Moore is actually the picture of the average American voter, because you're also statistically likely to be overweight in the United States. But the goal of the media apparatus in that case was to create a disgust reaction in order to motivate people to vote. And if we look at the way that people get their news a lot, especially older people who are statistically more likely to vote, we see different networks provoking different emotional reactions without actually uplifting people and providing them information. I would say Fox News is, if you watch Fox, and I have relatives that do, and it is very sad. But if you watch somebody watching Tucker Carlson, try not to look creepy, because that's a weird thing to do. But if you watch someone watching Tucker Carlson, the reaction that they're most likely to be experiencing is disgust. That there's these degenerate Democrats coming to take your toothbrush, or whatever his monologue that night is.
Yeah, to bring in the brown people, and you'll never recognize the country.
Yeah. If you're watching MSNBC, watching somebody watch MSNBC is also super creepy to do, but try to do it subtly. You can. It's possible. Give them the side eye. Learn the side eye. There's a lot of YouTube videos for you to do that. But the reaction that you'll see people watching MSNBC is outrage. If you're watching Maddow, it's like, how dare Trump do whatever he did? It's not informing you about why you should be outraged. It's not informing you about facts necessarily. It's specifically tailoring an entertainment product to provoke your emotional reaction.
To that specific emotional reaction.
Yeah. And you become dependent on these things in order to experience that emotional reaction, because you like experiencing emotional reactions to things. You're a playwright, so you know this about art. People really like emotional catharsis. And as people more and more become attracted to these very base, reproduced capitalist emotional reactions, what we see is a pathological political situation where a candidate doesn't have to be the guy that the founders dreamed of and didn't really almost ever live up to, where it's the enlightened statesman having a debate about the merits of whatever the issue of the day is. Yeah. What we see is,
by God, I don't agree with you, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it.
Right, the fantasy of the Lincoln Douglas debate, where it's two principled men having an argument. People forget that Douglas was in favor of brutal slavery, but but instead we have a pathological politic that is based on very base emotional reactions that people become dependent on through constant consumption of profitable media. And those political situations attract people like what we just dealt with for the last 4 years. And if you think that Donald Trump is unique in this, I highly encourage you to check out your local legislature, your city council, and your congressman. Donald Trump is out of the White House, but I live in Florida. God help me and forgive me for my sins. The weather's real nice. It's about 80 today.
In November.
Oh, it's great. I'm not shoveling snow.
As this planet boils.
Yeah. Well, if there's any justice, I'll be fighting giant mosquitoes in the next 20 years with my my AR-15 that's passed out to me by Governor Terminator 5. But but my senator is Rick Scott. I live in Ron DeSantis's old district. My congressman is a right-wing lunatic. The mayor of my town embraced the same Trump rhetoric that provoked the same emotional reaction in people. So we have a pathological politic that is producing these pathological candidates and government officials that are perpetuating the same politics that produce them, because it's profitable for them to reproduce those in order to maintain power.
Because people want emotional catharsis.
Correct.
You know, this is fascinating, actually, just because. So I'm not just trained as a playwright, but I'm also trained as a screenwriter. And, I'm trained as a screenwriter by professionals who write for Hollywood. And one of the things that I was taught kind of early on is that certain films essentially are about selling a specific emotional state to a lot of people. And that's kind of when you're working with the script, one of the things that you first get taught about, I think what they did was they used Frozen Interestingly enough, and I don't think the screenwriters intended this. I think this was a product of how the script for Frozen came about, because originally Elsa was supposed to be the antagonist.
I can actually see that pretty easily.
Oh, yeah. Well, she was supposed to be the antagonist, and then they wrote "Let It Go," and that was supposed to be her villain song about her losing her mind. And the song turned out so beautiful and incredible. They were like, oh my God, this is an incredible song. A villain can't sing this song. And they rewrote the whole script around Let It Go. So the script suddenly had two protagonists. And so instead of the standard, like, kind of hero's journey script, because of the two protagonists, they turned it into a Hegelian dialectic. And literally Frozen, if you look at it, it is a dialectic between Elsa, who is closed off, and Emma, I think, who is constantly letting it go. And, you have thesis, antithesis, and then by the end, it's synthesis. So here's the thing, though, and this is what I really wanted to bring up about this. One of the things that my screenwriting teacher taught me, he was basically like, look, you are writing, say, a Disney movie, and there are certain things that must be in that Disney movie. You can do whatever you want as long as it conforms to a certain set of expectations that people have going into a Disney movie. So you get a bunch of little girls. We've got to have a princess. We've got to have songs. We've got to have a prince. And there must be a kiss. Right. And if there's not, those kids are going to lose and a lot of adults too are just going to lose it. Because what they are doing is, it's like the promise of the premise has to be fulfilled. So yeah, I'm sorry. So continue. It sounds like you want to riff on that.
Well, yeah, a little bit. That's really interesting, because great art is supposed to be dialectical in that way. It's supposed to give you something to think about. It's supposed to uplift you for consuming it. And the dreck that we normally consume, which is not like Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, read that graphic novel, it's amazing, would conform to that basic stereotype. And they accidentally, I think that I didn't know this background, but they accidentally made a dialectical picture because they wrote a really good song. That's amazing. Because Walt Disney in the 1950s and 60s, Adorno specifically wrote about him. So did Horkheimer in Dialectic of Enlightenment. They didn't mention him by name, but later Adorno would actually say that Walt Disney is the most dangerous man in America, because of exactly what you were talking about. He was taking, at the time, original folk tales that had dialectical meaning and uplifted people for telling them.
And we're sometimes horrifying.
Sometimes, all the time horrifying. My mother, for her sins, bought me the original Grimm's fairy tales when I was like 8 or 9, and we're reading them, and she's like, "There's decapitations in like every one of these."
There's at the beginning of, not to keep bringing it back to this, but at the beginning of Reign of the Blood-Covered King, the 6-page ashcan that we put out because people overfunded the first Kickstarter. Thank you, by the way. Literally, I have a character, a peasant in the fields here. And he's literally singing, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, Marlene, gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I." And now here's the thing. That is word for word taken from the juniper tree, Grimm's fairy tale. Like word for word. And I was sitting there because I was like, I knew I wanted this peasant singing something. I was like, oh, it's got to be something from a fairy tale. And I'm like, are there any songs in fairy tales? That's like one of the only ones. And I'm just like, oh, that's perfect for a zombie story.
The Witcher 3 did that too. They took some old songs and put them in the game. But what Walt Disney did that's really pernicious, and I didn't realize it until I was an adult, was he took all of these essential stories and he stripped away all of the uncomfortable bits from them. And he just kept the marketable parts. And by doing that, over time, we've had 2 or 3 generations grow up under the tyranny of the mouse at this point. The way that we consume culture is highly influenced by these basic stories that we get. And when you consume enough culture industry produced stuff, it starts to limit your imagination. One of the great things about art, I think you'll probably agree, is that it expands your horizons a little bit when you consume great art. When I watched The Resistible Rise of a Bolshoi Ui, which is what we began this show with, that really expanded my horizons because it's about the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany from a German's perspective who had to flee. I believe he wound up running the play in Helsinki. But when you watch the latest Marvel movie, and I like the occasional Marvel movie because I'm not immune to its charms, you don't really get elevated. You get the emotional catharsis of the standard Marvel story. Guy gets superpower, or guy or girl gets superpower. Enemy gets the same superpower. Battle over a giant blue laser about to destroy the city. Good triumphs. The end. Snark in between.
Yeah. Though I will point out, and I think you're selling Marvel a little short here.
I think I just have fatigue.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, there's a couple, because when you mentioned this and when you mentioned what Walt Disney did with stripping out all of the, like, did you ever see Thor Ragnarok?
I love Thor Ragnarok,
yeah.
And I'll give them credit for that one.
Mm-hmm. Thor Ragnarok is a fascinating film, and one of the things that I love about it, both that it's super fun, but also like, and spoiler by the way, it's the same plot, it's the same basic plot as Black Panther, and really like what that moment where Hela breaks away the false narrative that Odin had built up about who the Aesir were, you know, and when she and I saw Thor Ragnarok as a direct refutation and renunciation of white nationalism, down to the fact when they're talking about how Asgard is not a place, it's a people, and showing up like that's us reckoning with the nastiness of our past in many ways. And so like I feel like Marvel sometimes does rise above what you're talking about, but I will also say there's a lot of movies where they simply don't.
Yes.
So you know, I think part of them, one of them, you know, was Endgame, because they did things very, very different, but with Thanos. But you know, even with Thanos, there was still a lot of there's stuff that must happen with regards to a superhero film.
Right.
So I think one of the reasons I think Marvel has been successful is that they have somewhat transcended that that type of approach to the medium, whereas DC has failed because they have not been able to do that.
Yes, and DC is probably a better example because almost all of their movies have completely stripped away the essential nature of those characters. Wonder Woman, I would give an exception to because I enjoyed that movie. It might just be me enjoying my emotional my catharsis. I see a comment. First Guardians of the Galaxy, love those movies too. But it's something that
I like the second one too, by the way.
Both of them. I'm actually looking forward to the third one. But something I should mention here is that it's okay to like mass-produced cultural products. It's okay to enjoy like a little bit of dreck, but you have to be aware, especially in late capitalism, of the consolidation and pernicious nature of industrially produced culture and what it can do to you. There's a great Horkheimer passage where he was talking about driving in his car, and he realized how pervasive the political broadcasts in Germany had become. But he could switch it over and listen to the latest jazz song. So you have choices in that. And that's something that we have to realize, is that all of these things, again, this is like the third or fourth time I've mentioned it, are not inevitable, and they can be overcome over time.
Yeah.
Adorno frustratingly didn't give us any practical solutions to the culture industry in his work. Horkheimer didn't really either.
Yeah. Well, that's a thing that unfortunately leftists really get stuck in.
It is.
The left, this is one of the reasons why I don't, even though I tend to agree with the left much more, I don't identify myself with the left, specifically because one of the things that the left tends to have excessively theoretical criticism, and they get stuck in such a heavily critical mindset that they only know how to attack, and they pretty much only know how to attack like in the realm of ideology. They don't know how to fight a war, you know.
Right.
Not that I'm saying they should, but
a metaphorical war.
Yeah, a metaphorical war.
And that is,
they don't know how to build.
And that's a function of the same process that we've been discussing, is that you'll find a lot of people who read a lot of theory me excluded because I'm wonderful. Always listen to my podcast and do what I say.
But
yeah, I will validate your emotional catharsis. But they are looking for that same emotional catharsis that other people get from industrially produced culture by quoting theory at somebody. And that is also a problem, because when you get into that mode where you're just looking for the dunk, is I guess what we would say nowadays, is that you're looking for that same emotional catharsis that we discussed earlier with the Fox News viewer. Go on Twitter or Facebook and look in the comment section, and I'm sorry that you had to do that, but observe the people who are arguing with people, and they're not trying to uplift people. They're trying to just get that dunk and that serotonin rush, right?
Yeah.
So
because certainty, by the way, certainty, like, and feeling certain about something, feeling very self-righteous, that has an effect on the brain not unlike cocaine. And especially people who I saw it happen with a roommate of mine, where he essentially got addicted to raging on the internet.
Yeah.
And
I've been a reply guy, so
as have I. We all can get sucked into that. But the thing is, you've got to remember that you're dealing with a drug, especially when it comes to social media, because these, like you mentioned earlier, that if you're an American, you're more likely to be fat. And the thing is that is true. And why is that? Well, it's because the food industry studied the science of addiction and used that science to try to get people to buy more of their mass-produced dreck. Similarly, the social media companies did the same thing and maximized, like, your smartphone and your computer feed and your social media, not simply to be something that you interacted with, but something that maximized your interaction. That maximized your what's the word? It's connection. No,
engagement is the word that you're looking for, I believe.
Yeah, engagement. The maximize your engagement, and as a result, they used the science of addiction. It's why you can sometimes moderate a social media addiction by turning on grayscale on your iPhone instead of, or your Android or whatever, because part of the use of the color is part of what addicts you to the phone.
And they use that same science as the big cable companies. So if you think you're getting away from that that serotonin rush by getting away from the cable companies, you're not. Yeah. And we might have had that maybe at the beginning of the internet, maybe like back in the dark Usenet days, if anybody remembers that. But we don't now, because we have giant YouTube channels that are produced in the same way as the mainstream culture industry. And it's something that you have to be very, very conscious of.
It probably has something to do with the fact that, like, BreadTube, like right now, and I think this is I've noticed this in some of the groups that I frequent. Luckily, not the anarchist groups, but the groups, particularly the ones like related to BreadTube and related to kind of the sort of social media figures. They're kind of melting down into civil war right now, and just pure drama. And the thing is that I think it's partially a reflection of the fact that Trump has now been removed as a threat.
Right.
And this is a community that came together responding to the threat of Trump and the threat of the alt-right. And now that that's no longer as important, they're trying to find new threats, and they're doing what activists do when they fail, is that they turn that inward, and it becomes a purity spiral. And so they're attacking each other and looking for secret Nazbols, or you got people declaring someone like ContraPoints to be transphobic or NB-phobic or Truscum or whatever.
Did that actually happen?
That did happen.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. And so you have like all this guilt by association, and it's these people, because what they've done is they got locked into that mindset of finding like these alt-right lolcows, like Davis Arini and stuff.
I actually know who that is. God help me.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. they get locked into that mindset, and they focus, and they're continually searching for that feeling without really 100% realizing it. And then when they can't get that from attacking the right, they attack the left.
Right.
And it's incredibly difficult to talk to someone in that headspace, because I have had conversations with people where I've tried to get them to think a little bit more broadly, and I realize everyone I talk to when I have those conversations, they are gearing up to get that experience again by finding a way to paint me as Cracker Von Patriarch or Cracker Von Transphobe or whatever.
I actually was called a reactionary one time for that same reason in a real life conversation, which was hilarious. The exact words they used was that I was a modernist structuralist, and therefore I was a reactionary bad influence on their politics.
What?
And it was a Georgetown philosophy major who didn't know what they were talking about at the time, and that's a trip. That's a whole 2-hour podcast on that conversation.
Yeah.
But
and I should also preface this, by the way. It is very important to not tolerate transphobia.
Completely. Don't tolerate that at all.
Yeah, but at the same time, you also need to make sure that you're dosing. We also had a comment from Vince Bird. The right isn't gone just because we unseated Trump. I hate how people are already talking like the work is done. I agree 1,000%.
He is absolutely right, and I will say this right now. Personally, is the stance with me that there is no alt-right in this country. There are no Trump Republicans in this country. There are mainstream failed right-wingers. The failed right wing has been completely in line with Trump for the better part of 100 years. Go back like 60 years. You'll find the John Birch Society. That was the original Q. Go back.
You've the silver shirts.
Yeah, go back 150 years. You'll find the KKK. That's the original the Charlottesville March.
Yeah,
this is not new.
Or the silver shirts, which were the original Proud Boys.
The Black Legion out in the Midwest that crushed Union protesters. This is not new. The failed right wing is a pernicious force in our society that has to be overcome, and the pathological political situation that we've been talking about, that we've produced through late capitalism and a capitalized culture industry, attracts these personalities to positions of power, and that is something extremely dangerous. So I would like to, we have about 15 minutes left. I would like to discuss how we overcome this, because I like to try to end on a positive note, because I discuss a lot of depressing continental philosophy, and I don't want to leave you guys in a hole. I want to give you that serotonin.
You don't want to be those leftists that tell you everything is terrible and there's nothing you can do. So what's the positive note here?
The positive here is that you can be aware of these things because of the theoretical frameworks that we've been discussing. You can come to these conclusions on your own, even without reading theory. Theory helps. The thing that I would suggest that we have to do moving forward is that, and it's something that we do kind of pretty well on the left usually, is that we have to build inclusive spaces for people to have conversations. We have to be extremely conscious that those inclusive spaces, online, offline, wherever, are lifting people up and taking failed right ideology, whatever that failed right ideology is, because the right always fails, and replacing it with something better. If you're someone like me and you don't like, say, Jordan Peterson, and I don't, and you'll be probably getting a series on 12 Rules for Life on my channel eventually, and it'll be me being really angry. You don't want to just dunk on Peterson fans. You want to take the failed ideology that he gives them and replace it with something better. Mm-hmm. You want to be aware of the culture machine that you inhabit, that permeates our lives and kind of determines the bounds of our imagination, and you want to overcome that. I personally try to overcome that by doing my best to be a rounded person outside the definitions that the culture industry sets for me. I'm developing some land right now out here in Florida. It's kind of what we do down here. We have a sunshine economy. I really enjoy actually working with my hands and getting outside. You don't have to do that. That's something that I do because I'm able to. Read some books, please, America. Read some freaking books. Take in some art.
Not a podcast.
Or read.
Not
listen,
a YouTube video.
Listen to my podcast. Listen to my podcast, because I'll do my best to uplift you. Listen to Brenton's show; he'll uplift you. Do something that challenges you. We also have to make sure that, and this is something that we have struggled with since Alexis de Tocqueville in America, we have to work on building a culture that values education, and not just education for getting a piece of paper from a university that says that you're qualified to do something, but education that rounds out an individual, that produces a functioning member of society, that produces a person who is trained to think critically about their role in society and society's history and what we have as an ideological goal moving forward. That kind of society and those kind of structures will always favor the left, because failed right-wing ideology does not, will not, and has never stood up to critical analysis, has never stood up to critical thought, and has never stood up to serious examination in history. So that's something that we have to do. We also have to be aware of our own movements, because I'm sure if anyone spent any time in left movements in this country, they've encountered some hack frauds. There have been, I'm sure Brenton can list like 50 or 60 people he's met that are hack fraud, quote unquote, leaders of left movements.
Yeah.
We just elected one to the White House, as a for instance.
Oh boy. Yeah.
He was better than the other guy, but it's still not a good thing.
He was. It's, I voted for Biden, and I was happy to do it because I hate Trump. And I just wanted to hurt him personally. But, at the same time, we're in a hostage situation, and we've been in a hostage situation for a very long time, and, deal with that problem and then work towards a more long-term solution. Don't get sheepdogged back into the Democratic Party, because they are going to try to do that. You're also probably going to find, like, if Trump is in fact out, you're going to notice that a lot of people, I said this before, I was like, when Trump got into the thing, I was like, I wonder how many principled libertarians are and anarcho-capitalists are suddenly just going to become Republicans. And 50%, boom, MAGA, alt-right. And similarly, there's going to be a lot of people that have been for years telling you that they're a socialist, they're a communist. Biden.
That's a symptom both of the imagination that has been set for us that's part of that situation, and it's also a symptom of our kind of inability to provide persuasive movements, and that's something that we also have to do. Public persuasion is super important. I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I didn't believe that. I don't think Brenton would either. That is something that we also, as the left, have to work on. Persuasion is one of the most difficult things to do in the world, because people will come to arguments and will come to your content with an idea in their head already, and I've seen it like once in my life, and I'm in my early 30s, of somebody actually having a road to Damascus movement. You probably won't ever actually see it, but you can contribute.
Even if you don't, you can contribute to it. Even if you don't see it. I remember, I'll give you so when I first, I was posting in some forums when I first really encountered anarchism, like anarchist ideology. And I remember I immediately, as a red-blooded American male, was, we can't have this. This can't be a thing. And I proceeded to lock horns and argue with these anarchists. And one of the anarchists that I argued with, I remember I said to him, I was like, so Thomas Jefferson said if men were angels, there'd be no need for government. So anarchists say men are angels and therefore there's no need for government. And he said, no. Anarchism says if men aren't angels, what's the point of putting some of them in charge of others? And I'm like, oh crap.
It's also not like completely disestablishing society, which is the other stereotype of anarchism.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anarchism, if you talk to actual anarchists, we are annoyingly pro-social most of the time.
Except anarchists. But
they're not really anarchists. But the point is, I didn't change my mind in that moment.
Right.
It took a year, 2 years after that I finally changed my mind. But that thought lodged itself in the back of my head and became a part of my worldview, because I suddenly realized, crap, he's right. And, he was, honestly. And some of the stuff that guy said actually made its way into a few of my plays at times, because he was very good with the zingers. But, the point is that when someone is persuaded by something, it very rarely happens in the moment, but you can contribute to it. It is a dialectic.
Right. And the thing that actually leads me to is one of the closing positive things that I want to close on is that a lot of the things that we're doing now are decades-long projects. Pushing the Democratic Party to the left is going to be a decades-long project. God help us. Getting Medicare law for all is going to be like a decades-long project. Getting sensible environmental progress, it really can't afford to be a decades-long project, but it's what's looking like we're going to do.
Yeah.
And persuading people of the superiority of your idea is going to be a long project. And that's something else that the culture industry and our pathological situation right now has kind of taken away from us, is the ability to see things in terms of decades-long projects. There's the famous quote about the man who plants the tree that he'll never see the shade of. But I want you to take a moment and Google the Notre Dame Cathedral. And you don't have to like the Catholic Church and the structure that it represents, and I certainly don't. But I want you to look at the beauty of that architecture. And I want you to realize that was almost a century-long project. And thinking in terms of a long-term project was able to accomplish that. Thinking in terms of long-term projects, 100 years ago, there was no Medicare, there was no Medicaid, there was no Social Security in this country, and unions were basically illegal.
Yep.
We can overcome these things.
People were, I mean, look up the Harlan County War, look up the Battle of Blair Mountain, like people
100 years ago.
Yeah. Now, there's something also that I wanted to bring up because you brought up Notre Dame, and I think this ties into this with art and culture. Notre Dame is gorgeous. I was there when I was a teenager, and it is a hugely beautiful structure that people were able to build over decades. And the thing was, it had fallen into a huge amount of disrepair and was close to getting torn down. And Victor Hugo wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And that is why, in large part, why we still have The Hunchback. It's why we have Notre Dame today, because of that novel. And the thing is that art, there's a great, if you look up Alan Moore, look up like Alan Moore on magic. And Alan Moore, brilliant comic artist and writer, wrote V for Vendetta, not the liberal movie. But what he talks about essentially is that the role that an artist actually should fulfill in society is the role of the shaman, the role of the magician. Because what is magic when you look at it? It is the ability to create a change in consciousness through the manipulation and creation of symbols. And if you look at like in our fiction, when people show magic on TV, that's really what they're doing. Like even we talked about The Witcher earlier, and what his magic comes from signs. He manipulates a symbol to create a change within physical reality. According to Alan Moore, this is essentially the artist's role, and artists have been tricked and sold short by capitalism, by the way, into presenting ourselves as mere entertainers, when in fact, our role is much more. We are the people that stand outside of society and, provide a much needed perspective to the people who are living within society, within the pale. We are beyond the pale for the people who are living within the pale, so that we can all, inhabit and drive this crazy machine that is human life and human society.
Right. So make your art, kids. Seriously, like whatever your art is, just do it, and make sure that it's something that, well, actually just do it and see what happens.
Even if it's garbage, like you get better at it, but like the difference between a professional artist and an amateur artist is the professional creates a lot more garbage.
I still read My Immortal, guys. So I mean, like
and hey, My Immortal taps into something something
in my reptile brain. So kind of in conclusion, we've seen how we're living in a pathological state right now. We've seen kind of how we've created that through late capitalism, through building a system that incentivizes profit and replication above all else, that creates itself an industrial culture industry that limits our imagination and replicates itself constantly. And as it's replicated, it's like a copy. It just becomes less and less of the original and more of the basic. And we've seen that we can overcome that. This is not something that is natural. This is not something that is inevitable. This is something that we can, in our everyday lives, kind of do just a little bit to overcome. If you make the world just a little bit brighter, if I've made your world a little bit brighter after hearing this, then your work is accomplished, and you can continue to work to make the world a little bit brighter in other ways.
I agree, and
Yeah.
I'm actually going to kind of close with with a quote that you made me think of, and I've
Outstanding.
brought this out on my channel before, but from the Wendell Berry poem, "The Mad Farmer
That's a good
Liberation
one.
Manifesto," is once the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it, leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than is necessary, and some leading in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection. And also, by the way, in that poem, he talks about your crop being the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest.
See, I called it psychic.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, the fact is that, this, and sometimes, for those of you who haven't seen my stuff, who are following me because this is your podcast, I talk a lot about philosophy and Buddhist philosophy and stuff. And a lot of what we've been talking about with our kind of positive step forward is sort of a natural law that we're all talking around. In my Buddhist sect, we talk about the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is how it's expressed. But this is something that all people at all times and all cultures have always had access to. It's just really hard to talk about and think about. And you can find out more about that. I assure you, it's not woo. I know it might sound like it, but that's because you're racist.
We should do. I really need you to read some Schopenhauer, so you can. I've never actually discussed Schopenhauer with a Buddhist, and I'd love to do that because I
would love to. Yeah, because Schopenhauer has some incredible things. Okay, so yeah. By the way, I got a thing from a Soul for $9.99. Took my mom's credit card like you told me to. Here you go, bro. Dude, I don't want money from your mom's credit card. Please don't do that if that is in fact money from her. If it's a joke, good joke, but please, I appreciate the support, but don't steal for me.
and right now the only way that the Moustache Mafia is monetized is Secret Soros Moon Platinum at our Illuminati Space Mason Patreon. You see, and to access that, there is a computer in Washington, D.C. that's connected to a computer in Tel Aviv, that's connected to a computer in Moscow, that's connected to a computer in Nebraska. And that is taking your precious bodily fluids and turning it into Secret Soros Moon Platinum to fund our operations. And if you don't know how to access it, you don't know how to access it, kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So please do not spend your mom's hard-earned money on
definitely
this.
Don't do that. Just Illuminati Space Mason Platinum only. So I think we're coming to the end, and I'm going to thank Brenton for being an associate of the Moustache Mafia. Congratulations. A couple more appearances and you'll be a main member if you like. We'll have a little ceremony. You got to burn a picture of Hegel and take an oath of secrecy. It's a long process that I haven't made up yet. Thanks, guys, for listening to this week. I hope this the talk was productive for anybody that listened to it, and tune into my show and tune into Brenton's show if you get the chance. And don't steal your mom's credit cards. I can't believe I have to tell people this, but it's 2020.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all right. She's a landlord. Yeah, she's a landlord, but she's also your mom. Don't damage relationships with important for people you don't know on YouTube.
Yeah, it's really weird. That's exactly like the thing that we've been talking about for the better part of an hour not doing. So I'm feeling like Socrates right now. I'm going from Socrates and I'm gradually drifting to Diogenes in my level of snark. So don't make me go full Diogenes, kids.
It's funny also too, because like with regards to landlords, like landlordism is parasitism on our society.
Look up what Adam Smith said about landlords.
Yeah, but also like one of the reasons that I was not ground into absolute poverty by landlords in New York was I had a friend who was a landlord that put me up for free in one of his places for like 6 months. So it's not always terrible. Like, but
No,
then again, landlords just solved the problem they created, so maybe it is. I don't know.
I think Michael Brooks actually said it really well. I don't know if he was quoting somebody, but that's where I heard it, where he said, "Be ruthless to systems, but be kind to people."
There you go. Be ruthless to systems and be kind to people. So be kind to your mom. And
yes.
I don't know how YouTube works, so I can probably refund that $9.99 if I can figure it out.
Right.
I'm hoping you're joking, but yeah. Okay. So guys, do you want to plug your pluggables? We're at an hour and I got another podcast.
Yeah, of course. So if you're listening to this on my channel, congratulations. Welcome to Moustache Mafia. I'm Moustache Mafia on YouTube. I'm a great, cool little logo. I'm Moustache Mafia on SoundCloud. I'm Moustache Bob 2, not 1. I don't know who the Moustache Bob 1 is on Twitter. If you know who Moustache Bob 1 is, please inform me, because there can be only one, and we will have a duel on top of a skyscraper in Minecraft. Brenton, please, I'm sure that I have a smaller audience right now than you, but I will be bigger than Chapo Trap House soon. Please plug your stuff.
You're bigger than Chapo Trap House right now.
I really need to lose weight.
Yeah, and check that out. Also, I will be jumping onto another, the Communist versus Libertarian podcast, as soon as this is over. So please do keep an eye on that.
Oh, they're doing a podcast now?
They invited. This is like the second issue, but they invited me on. I don't know if any libertarians will be on it, because we did the Communist versus Libertarians Among Us stream, and there were there were no libertarians. It was just communists and socialists.
They don't want to work as a collective to find the imposter, but thank you.
And Soul, thank you. I'm glad that you admitted it was a joke. Yeah. So anyway, dude, this has been great. I guess I'm not going to close out your podcast. So do you have anything?
Outstanding. So that's the Moustache Mafia podcast for this week, guys. I invite you to engage me in the comments or on Twitter. I probably read everything. Maybe I don't. Maybe I do. Find out. Join the conversation. If you think I'm wrong about something, if you think Brenton's wrong about something, please let me know. I will happily engage with anyone who comes for an intellectual, interesting conversation. Listen to my show. Listen to Brenton's show. Make sure that you are advancing the dialectic every day as much as you possibly can. And
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. And we'll see you real soon, guys.
Yeah. And what I'll say is, you can find me, just Google my name, Brenton Lengel on YouTube. Check out Snow White Zombie Apocalypse #3. The Kickstarter is about to launch. The link is in here. And also, if some people in chat asked if the Moustache Mafia, the link for both the back episodes of Moustache Mafia and for the Moustache Mafia YouTube channel, which is new, is in the description, and definitely follow those. So yeah, thank you guys very much. And I will catch you on the flip side. Definitely pop over to the Communist versus Libertarian podcast, which will be starting in 2 minutes on this same channel.
I will be smoking a cigar and listening to that, and I highly encourage anyone who's listening right now to do the same.
Sounds like fun. All right.
All right, out.